It's Tom Suvansri from Perennial Pride, having our weekly prideful conversation. So, hopefully, everyone's had a wonderful week. It's looks sunny out today, a little brisk here in Connecticut, but still a nice day. Had a great week this week. A lot of fun things going on in life, and no more masks this week, so that's or at least optional. So that's certainly been a blessing to have. For the kids and the wife who's working in the school. So hopefully we're turning corners and trying to get back to sort of a normal life, which, now we have a lot of other things happening globally that are making it a little uncertain. But we try to remain calm and hopefully everyone take some time to just recognize some of the good things in life and be grateful for what's going on, because obviously there's a lot of chaos out there. But this week I wanted to just share some thoughts, something that kind of came up. It was actually related to a quote I saw related to Bruce Lee, which I've always been a lifelong fan of his, and obviously his movies, but more of his sort of mindset around things and spirituality really struck me. And the one quote that's always stuck out with me, he talks about legacy in this way. So instead of buying your children all the things you never had, you should teach them all the things you were never taught. Material things wear out, but knowledge stays. And to me, it's really sticks with me. Obviously, in the world I live in, from a personal financial world, we talk about legacy planning and passing on money to things you care about, whether it's family, friends, charities, or whatever. Those are important because we want to make sure the money and wealth we've accumulated go to good use and to things we care about. But it's impacting generations in a lot of different ways. It isn't just about money. Um, I think about it from my own personal perspective, thinking about my parents. My father's now since passed. My mother's still alive, but from my father, I learned the need to take risks and be courageous. And here came from Thailand. I'm first generation here, and just like a lot of immigrants, paving a path for his family, right, to come from Thailand and risk a lot to leave at the time my mother and my sister back in Thailand to come to the United States as a physician, a foreign land with people he didn't know, the language he didn't know, and he forged his own path here as a doctor and practiced for a number of decades here in the United States, and allowed us to grow up in America. And I feel so grateful for those things. So he had the courage to do that. I can't even imagine what that would take these days. Like that just still astounds me. But he did it, and he knew it was going to be hopefully open up doors for him himself and his family. For my mother, I obviously very caring, compassionate. She took care of us primarily growing up. But more recently, just her battle with cancer and overcoming it and going up, having ups and downs as you imagine with cancer. But she fought through it so bravely and courageously, and now in her 80s, she's looking great and as healthy as can be, and her persistence and continue to fight is one that inspires me, and I think about often when things are challenging. So, you learn so much from your parents, but those are two things that stuck out to me. Unfortunately, I grew up in upper middle class area, and thought everything was great in terms of family and neighborhood and such in schools, but what I came to recognize over the course of time, what my parents did not know or learn about, is personal finances. Dad growing up running a successful sort of family practice, everything seemed great, right? You didn't know. We didn't talk about money, and so lo and behold, unfortunately, because of their lack of knowledge and good advisors, they unfortunately didn't have the best financial outcomes in their lives, and it really stuck with me to make sure I focused on that for myself and pave a path for hopefully future generations of my family. down the road. So and it's really difficult because I think they were doing the best they could with the information they had, and unfortunately, it did not turn out well. And it's one of those things that I'm grateful to have seen it and helped me pave my own path, and their struggles and challenges have benefited me. So it's another thing I'm grateful for them for. It unfortunately they had to go through it. Um, so that's the type of thing that I take pride in personally to help my family, but certainly empower my clients who also want that and learn how to take control over their financial futures and be in that driver's seat. Can often feel a little bit out of control with that. So one of the core concepts that I sort of share with clients that are thinking long term about their finances and want to investigate new ways is applying a foundational piece called the family banking concept. And you may have heard things like infinite banking concept. Really, it's just at its core fairly basic concepts around finance and how to manage your wealth and control more of the financing arm of your life. And banks are such an integral part of our lives, but what if you could actually control aspects of that for yourself? What does that mean? And I'm not going to go too deep into it here, but what I thought would be good is to share that because of the concepts included in the family banking concept, it can be a tremendous tool to teach not only future generations about how money works. Right? It's not just about what's the latest and greatest investment, but our lives are filled with having to purchase things and invest things and manage debt and all these things that really are centerpieces of our financial lives. And unfortunately, the way that we are taught causes a lot of people to have a significant amount of wealth transferred away from them, and sometimes they don't even notice. So these are great teaching tools to not just hand over money to people and our children and hopefully our grandchildren and beyond, but teaching them good concepts of how to manage their own wealth so they can build it, keep more of it, use more of it, and if they want to, pass more onto it if they so choose. So some of the lessons I've learned, as it relates to the family banking concept, something's pretty basic, right? When we think about assets, I mean, someone asks, well, what's your most valuable asset? Someone may say their investment account or their house or their business, perhaps. But what I would say is number one asset is you and me individually. Our ability to earn and produce and create and expand our thinking and grow. We're our number one asset. Think about it from a perspective of how much you can produce in your job or your business, and the number of years you may do that for in the future. That's your value. That's called human life value, and it's a massive number when you really think about it. And unfortunately, what I often see is that people are undervaluing that. Most people would never, in their mind, not insure their house for its full value. If it burned down, of course you'd want the full amount. Well, if you think about it from a perspective of your ability to create income and produce and expand, well, most people are not protecting that nearly at that level. And so life can change drastically if anything happens from death or disability or even lawsuits. So a lot of it's a counterintuitive approach, but because people don't want to pay for it, of course, right? But this is where the family banking concept can help figure out ways to efficiently do that so that you're protecting what I would say is your number one asset is you and your ability to serve and provide for yourself and your families. So the second thing that I think the family banking concept helps people learn about is to think long term. Obviously we have to live day to day and take actions. That's clearly very, very important. But it's also important for people to also think long term, especially around the finances, because we clearly know everyone's heard the concept of compounding interest and growing wealth. Well, it doesn't happen overnight. I know a lot of people are looking for that magic bullet. What's that investment that's going to explode, whether it's crypto or whatever it is that comes about. And yes, there's nothing wrong with having some money there. But at its core, thinking long term, thinking about how can I build portions of my wealth sustainability without loss that's under my control long periods of time can be massively valuable for people. And it actually allows people to take more risk elsewhere when you have something that's stable, able to be accessed and is yours and protected from loss and taxes. So the family banking concept helps people to think there's pieces of my wealth that I got to think long term, right? And think about the eventual certainty in our lives that we're going to eventually all pass. We just don't know when. So hopefully we get to live that long life. And what does that look like? What do we want to achieve with that? And what do we want our wealth to do for us? And this helps people to think about it on a long-term basis. And related to that is it teaches about basic saving. Saving is a lost art these days. I think the savings rates are very minimal because where you save, you're gonna when I say savings, I'm thinking of things that are liquid, do not lose, just go one direction. Well, most people would automatically think, well, it's a bank, right? I put my money into a bank. That's where my dollars go immediately. That's the first spot after the IRS takes their cut, and it goes into a bank and it sits there, and then it can be used to serve my life or invest from there. But keeping money in a bank, and it's a good idea to have that savings money there, but it doesn't provide much. You know, how much? What's the percentage you get on interest? And so that actually is losing money every single year. But it's still important to save consistently over time and have that money grow and build. Getting into that habit, it's just a good habit. So it's something that the family banking concept helps to instill, that you're in this lifetime and you should be saving consistently for long periods of time. There's this idea of, to create sort of any sort of growth in any of our life, not just wealth, but it takes time and compounding, and it's a matter of being consistent and constant in your activity and your growth to really get to those areas of success in your health, your wealth, and well-being, or whatever it is you're striving to achieve. The fourth thing it helps, the family banking concept helps to teach, is the idea of financing. And when people think about financing, that is, most people maybe equate it to getting financing to, say, a mortgage to buy a home. But what I'm saying financing is we finance everything in our life, in our lives. Whether we pay cash or we borrow against it, it serves our lives, right? To live in a house or rent an apartment or buy a car or fund college. It's financing. It's just how we pay for it is so key and important. And so the family banking concept helps to teach how do you do that efficiently so you can keep more of your wealth instead of allowing it to transfer away to financial institutions. I mean, this is just another way of thinking about it, and I'm not going to go deep into it here, but it teaches that a different approach or alternative approach to maybe maximize your dollars. The fifth sort of thing I think it teaches is the idea of ownership of wealth, and the concepts around it. You can get into the really nitty-gritty pieces of it, and I geek out on it personally. But at its heart is controlling the use of your dollars more throughout your life. Finance can get complicated, and there's a lot of rules and regulations around whether it's a government account or not, and when you can use your money. But the idea in the family banking concept is keeping more under your control, and that's really the heart of it. And understanding that the more you own your wealth, and where you're storing your wealth or even investments, that it actually reduces risk because you can own and control and use it under your discretion and giving you more options regardless of what's happening in life. And that's the kind of core sort of teaching to help people realize you can own your wealth. It's just sometimes requires maybe an alternative way of thinking about it than what you would typically see in conventional wisdom. And because a lot of the rules of how financial institutions are playing by are different than what maybe they're actually teaching us. To accumulate money, it's piled away, and let it maybe grow, and then we get to use it someday. Well, I'm more of the belief that we want to use that now, all through life, and have our money continue to flow and grow, and use it for our own purposes, personally and professionally, but never let that money sit stagnant. And I think that is a very different concept than what is typically taught in the financial world. And lastly, the thing I think it teaches me, and when I share this with clients too, around the felon banking concept, is that we want to build this model that's very efficient, right? We think of a plane. The best concept of this is a plane, right? Of if you're flying a plane, would you want headwinds or tailwinds? Unfortunately, in the world of finance, there's a lot of headwinds that are making it very difficult to go fast and build wealth quickly because there's a lot of things that are pulling away from your ability to gain wealth. Wealth is actually getting away from you in a lot of cases through interest costs, to taxes, to fees, insurance premiums, you name it. There's a lot of ways that money is being pulled away from you and in us, and that makes it hard to get there. We want to flip that and say, well, how do I generate tailwinds? And so that is the concept, is trying to find where money is basically leaking from your financial life so that that can remain there for you to use how you wish and can help you grow and build your wealth with a lot more safety and less risk and more ownership and control. So those are the 6 things that I thought are good sort of teaching points. It's not even just handing the wealth over, but imagine that could be shared with your friends, your families, your clients, your children, that they can use to help manage and own and control their own wealth, not just to build money, but so that they can impact and control their lives, and give them the permission to do what they've been called to do in their lives in service, whatever that is, and give them that option. And that ultimately is what we're striving to do, is how do we impact the most people, and one aspect of it is controlling our wealth so we can dictate how we live our lives and what we do on a daily basis. So I had a mouthful this week, but I wanted to share that. It's been something that sort of certainly I'm personally passionate about, and certainly if you ever want to learn more about these things, certainly reach out. Love a conversation, just for those who are open-minded about it and to learn more things that could potentially be beneficial for you and your family and your legacy. Take care. Have a great weekend. I'll be back next week for things. Certainly leave a comment, and if you have any questions you'd love me to answer, I'd love that engagement, and we'll talk soon.